Hey everyone, my name is Mary Beth McAndrews. I'm so excited to be here today with Bruce Wemple, director and writer of Dread's newest film, Island Escape. Hello, how are you?
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to be chatting with you today about Island Escape. Obviously, you seem to love science fiction. Is that a an apt description to give to you? Are you a sci-fi horror head?
Absolutely. Yeah, since day one, I think you can trace it back a little like when I was a kid. It was, you know, probably less obscure movies, but anything in that kind of 1980s, like, whether it's somewhere between Back to the Future and then like the original Terminator, and then I like landed somewhere in between, and then
Hell
so
yeah.
I think the original Terminator would for me at the time was like the perfect combination of like had a horror kind of vibe to it and then a major sci-fi element. So
Yeah, it's a slasher. I feel like it's definitely like a monster slasher movie.
a hundred
Just kind
percent.
of like Alien and Aliens is like horror versus action slash all that
Yeah.
good stuff.
And
But
I think they blend together really nicely. So
yeah, they
yeah.
do. But so Island Escape is your latest, and you wrote the script as well, correct?
Yep, I did.
So where did this idea for Island Escape come from for you?
I think if you look back through my previous movies, they always kind of go between a very heady sci-fi concept, and I think we love doing that just as us as a team. We always like there's something super cinematic about messing with whether it's time or the perception of time or your perception of events,
Yeah.
and the trippier, the more mind bendy you can get. It's fun, and it's also doesn't always require a ton of extra money to make something that just kind of blows your mind when you're messing with the order or the perception of time and events. So we always love
Yeah.
playing with that. And then the other love we have is making horror films and more specifically like creature horror. We always have a blast with that. And all those movies present new challenges. And I think on a technical level, we always have a blast trying to how do we do something, whether it's from the monster design or from the set pieces or all those sort of more how do we entertain slash scare slash keep the monster interesting. All of that's super fun for us to figure out. And this was a movie that we kind of started putting together and be like, how do we kind of combine all those elements to one coherent movie? And this is where we arrived at. I think it started off, we all loved that brand of action movie or action horror where it's that mercenaries going to an island.
Yeah.
They're about to fight some monsters. It's been done before, I think, but I think that was kind of part of the plan was to lean into all those tropes for like maybe the
Yeah.
opening act, and then kind of do our own thing with it. But once make sure the audience is comfortable with the story and with the brand of movie we're making before we kind
Yeah.
of flip it upside down.
Yeah. So what is it like? I feel like when you're trying to make a movie about time perception and overlapping timelines, it feels like a very scary puzzle, like that Charlie Day meme of him like looking like with like all of the strings from Always Sunny, and
F.A.
he's going like
Sylvia.
this, and he's like trying to explain like the chronology. What is that like with the team trying to, keeping track of chronology? Obviously, it's on the in the scripts, but I feel like sometimes in your head it must get a little bit like, wait, hold on, what timeline, which time period? Like, what is that like to keep track of that in production for you?
Yeah, you hope it's in the script. And usually
Yeah.
the events are in the script, and then on set, inevitably, there's something that comes up. Maybe it's a plot hole. We're better at that now, but usually it's some sort of like so and so had a bandage on their arm
Oh,
in
continuity
this sort of
is the
timeline, and then
devil.
yeah, and they're like, and the movie doesn't work unless it's really sticking to continuity because the audience are going to be looking for that.
Yeah.
The film, you can't have a movie that's filled with clues about times and everything like that, and then have some big fat continuity error that gives. And so that becomes sometimes a little bit of a headache, but it's that's part of the puzzle. It's part of what makes them
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, and what we learned with Island Escape, or learned before Island Escape, and what we tried to bring to it was not getting too caught in the weeds of the how everything happened. We knew
Cool.
how we knew, and we had a whole backstory and how everything functioned, and we had those rules written down for us, but we only really gave information that was relevant to the characters' motivations and relevant
Cool.
to
Okay.
what they had to do. So, because we just kind of started thinking that if we start over explaining and start trying to like really spoon feed exactly what's happening and not just how do these characters get off the island, which is ultimately their goal. Everything extra starts kind of clouding what the story's actually about. So
It's like
just
it becomes
keeping
like
that in.
primer, just like a lot of science, and you're like, I don't understand.
And I love Primer. I've seen it
Yeah.
so
Oh
many
yeah. That's
times.
not shade to primer. It's just that's a very different kind of movie.
But I will say Primer is an exhausting movie to watch, and you do stop really focusing on the story. You at least get lost in what the story actually is because you're trying to figure out what he's talking about. I mean, I think you could point like what like 2020, like when Tenet came out, that it was hard because I think a lot of people, and myself included, were watching the movie trying to figure out the actual time and how everything
Yep.
worked out. And it became for me personally a little distracting to actually
Oh
be figuring
yeah.
it out. And then took a couple watches to actually understand what the story was, what the story was saying, and that sort of stuff. But so you got to be careful that for us anyway, we realize that making sure the characters' motivations, the characters' arcs always come first, and the science time details come second and kind of support whatever the character's arc is going to be. Because I think if the audience they can get a little lost with the sci-fi jargon and time stuff, but if they know what the character's main motive is, then I think they'll stick with it. At least my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Well, and I think you keep it just like you keep it sci-fi enough that it isn't like, wait, what's going on? Like there's a balance there where you're like, okay, wait, I understand the rules of this place. Like you establish the rules pretty well, which I feel like is so important for a movie like this. Like you have the rules, you don't have to over explain, but it's still like the audience always I always want to know the rules. I'm a rules, like what's the lore kind of girl. So it's always fun being like, all right, what are the rules of this place?
And it's
Which must have
frustrating
been
when,
kind of cool. Yeah.
yeah, when it breaks the rules. And that was another thing that we're like, all right, how do we? Because you don't want to spend too much time on rules, right? You want to
Yeah.
get them out quickly, and so and since we were already leaning into these tropes, and we have all the badasses, like, okay, we need the scientist there, we need him there just to deliver the
Cowboy hat. You need cowboy hat
exposition
guy.
dumps.
I love cowboy hat. I love a good cowboy hat character. I love when an action horror has a cowboy hat guy. I'm like, yes, that's my favorite. Always my favorite
Yeah,
guy.
he's spoilers, but as soon as you see a cowboy hat guy, something he's not going to make
You
it.
know what's happening to him. You
Yeah,
know, you're ready for like an epic death of epic
yeah,
proportions for cowboy hat guy. So I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, you need a scientist, a cowboy hat, all that. But we were like, okay, so we have the scientist and whatever we need explained to help the audience get through, we can give it to him. Will Champion played him, and I think he just loves to sink his teeth into those sorts of. He always calls
That's
himself
awesome.
Doctor Exposition some points because
Hell
he
yeah.
knows he knows the part he's playing. He knows what the assignment is in there.
That's amazing. Okay. So this is not Island Escape, but you have made two Bigfoot movies, correct? Is it
Yeah,
two?
yeah.
So what are you a Bigfoot? Like, are you like a believer's not the right word, but like thinks it's fun, kind of like interested in cryptids. That's where I'm at. I love cryptids and like Mothman and everything, but I love Bigfoot movies. So I wanted to ask you about Bigfoot movies because I think they're always so fun. So like why Bigfoot? Just because monster and you wanted to play with it?
A little bit. I think that's how it
Cool.
started. The plan was never to do two Bigfoot movies. I didn't set out being like this is
Fair,
part of
fair. I
a
get that.
yeah. This is but the first like true horror movie I made is a movie called Monstrous,
Yeah.
and we made for like no money, and it was just kind of a labor of love. I remember I was on my roof in Brooklyn had like a big thing of fur that I was painting, and so people would come up and be like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was making a Bigfoot costume, and I had to explain I'm making a Bigfoot costume because we're going out in the woods next week and we're filming a Bigfoot movie. But it was essentially it was a character study about these two women that I didn't write it, but um frequent collaborating Amanda Shields wrote it, but it was two women. They go to this cabin and they kind of get stuck there, and this it's just kind of like romance thriller, but they have to be stuck at the cabin, and there's around the cabin is Bigfoot, and it takes place in this town called Whitehall, which is already known for Bigfoot sightings. And it was very exciting because it was like a weird combination of genres and stories, and Bigfoot has a big part to play in the story, but also there's this really interesting romance thriller happening in the middle. And so that was a blast, and we made it for again nothing. And that was the first, and like that was our thing. We all day jobs and everything, like most people do. And but we were like, okay, if we can just count, a couple grand together, we'll make this movie. And that was the first movie that we got connected with the distributor, and they were like, "This is worth something. Like, we can actually, not make a lot of money on it, but they were like, do you want to make more?" And for us, like, that was the dream. And I mean, they gave us enough money that we could like feed ourselves on set and like have a couple extra days of shooting. That was really like what
Woo!
it gave us, but that was for us amazing. And we're on our 20s at the time. We're like, we can make a movie with someone's giving us some money to make a movie, make a horror movie. Awesome. So we after that we did a Wendigo movie called The Retreat.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
and that was a blast. And that was like a winter backpacking, like my two actor friends of mine. I'm like, this is going to be tough. We're going to go into the high peaks. We're actually going to do backpacking. It's going to be cold. It's going to be, but we did it, and I'm very proud of that movie as well. And then of course, once we wrapped that movie, this conversation was like, do you want to bring them both together? And I was like, why not? Which is funny because those first two movies are very, very. They take themselves pretty seriously. They're mainly character studies,
Yeah.
they're especially the Wendigo because it's such a psychological battle, and the guy gets lost alone and he's kind of fighting the elements. The third one is a movie called Dawn of the Beast, which is just like a drive-in campy, like let's put a bunch of young people in a cabin that are there to research cryptozoology for some class, and they're getting picked off one by one. And that was more just we had a little more money to do it, and we're like, let's see from a technical level how many gore gags we can pull off, how many, how we can amp up the Bigfoot costume. The first one we barely showed it. That third one, or the second Bigfoot movie, the third of that trilogy, we really put the Bigfoot on screen, and then the Wendigo, and how do we, and like we could have like a cool demonic, almost like Evil Dead transformation in there, and it was really just we were having so much. The story it almost came secondary to just like how much blood and those sort of things we could pack into it. So
Wait, that's gotta be fun as a director a little bit to be like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just play a little bit. Like, we'll just
absolutely.
see what we can do and what I can accomplish with the budget. That's awesome to go. I mean, as I love character studies, but it has got to be fun to just play a little bit with like gore.
Totally, totally. We
You're
and that was
like,
the one after two very serious movies. Just being on set and everyone being like, "This is awesome!" Like, yeah, okay. We're gonna tear someone's arm off now, and then we're gonna set someone else on fire. We're just doing all these insane things, and we're just like, we'll find a way to fit it all together in the story. And then yeah, yeah, it was just fun. I mean, it's the movie.
so cool.
It's just fun. So it was a nice step away. Yeah. So that's how that
Yeah.
came to be. And then after that, I was like, all right, that's it for me. I think I'm done with the Bigfoot movies. So
Okay, three's a lot for well, three cryptid movies, two
yeah,
Bigfoot and two Wendigo movies. That's a lot for any director, but it seems like you've probably learned a lot too in going like to Island Escape and using both practical and visual effects. Because I feel you used, and maybe you tricked me, it looks like you used both, like a lot of really awesome practical effects, but then some digital effects to enhance. And it's cool to see how those are combined in a movie like Island Escape.
yeah. I think we always try to keep it practical. I think we've
Yeah.
toyed with some other. The VFX that mainly are in there, besides a couple things near the end, are they're comp shots. So it's not necessarily a CGI. There's nothing completely
Yeah.
computer generated, but there are multiple shots that kind of are comped together. So it's
Yeah.
that I'm always willing to do that because I kind of am confident that usually works.
Yeah.
The fully computer generated stuff, especially for it's not a huge amount of money we're working with, that it doesn't always work out. Or if it does, we do want to do it, we have to focus it on one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
yeah, we try to keep it practical, especially the makeup design and everything. The gore gags are mostly practical. I mean, there's a little enhancement in there, but
Yeah.
nothing again that's completely computer generated. And then the ending has some actual VFX. The sky's imploding and they're traveling through a
Yeah.
wormhole. That's just what you got to
You
do.
didn't make that
So
actually happen in real life. What the
we didn't
heck?
find a
Come
real
on.
wormhole. No, we couldn't set off an atomic bomb and do what.
Darn it. We haven't gotten there quite yet with movie production.
Not us yet.
But Bruce, my last question for you is, do you remember the first film that ever scarred you for life, that ever terrified you, that changed your life and towards horror?
I have like a half answer for that, and then maybe I have a better answer. But
Okay,
it
cool.
was,
Love it.
it was a weird. When I grew up, I definitely wasn't allowed to see, when I was like five, so I was fascinated with horror movies, but I wasn't allowed to see most
Yeah.
horror movies.
Okay.
So I was like, say Halloween, I was just like, I was dying to watch Halloween, but of course my parents would never let me watch Halloween.
Yeah.
However, what they did, I think, was worse, which my dad would not thinking about it, describe the plot of the movie and what's in the movie. Like I'd be like, because I really wanted to know. I'm like, so what's it about? What's it about? And he would say, like, oh, it's a killer. He's like, as he goes around neighborhoods and he has his knife, and like, I'm like, how's he kill people? He's like, he hides in closets and dark hallways. And that freaked me out and that scarred me so much. And I would have been 1,000 times better off just watching the
Just
movie.
watching it, because then you're not making up the scenarios in your
Yeah.
head and like imagining the worst possible things, because like
Hmm.
we all know the worst things that we can imagine come to our heads. It's
Yeah.
not going to be on the screen.
I think most of
Thanks,
my horror
Dad.
movie scarring was knowing what the movie was and what I thought what happened in the movie. And that gave me nightmares constantly until I was old enough to actually. By the time I think I was watching movies, I'd imagine things that were way scarier than and so watching them actually wasn't so
You're like,
bad.
this isn't even that scary. Like, what
I
the heck?
know.
I thought Michael Myers was way worse than that.
I
Jesus,
know.
Dad. Like,
So I think that's kind of my like,
okay.
yeah, my scarring story, if you will. And then I think that's
Okay.
why I loved making them, because I think once like I got over that hump, like in my imagination of like, oh, what I'm imagining actually isn't in the movies, but it could be in like whatever. And then making them was super fun because you're kind of, you can see, what's
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for chatting with me today about Island Escape. And everyone, Island Escape is out now in VOD. So if you're looking for some cool action, gory sci-fi, check it out. And all the links are below. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Bruce.
Thank you so much for having me.